Hey everybody, sit down around the hearth, grab a frosty mug of ale. Welcome to the Lion's Pride Tavern, where we discuss all things Azeroth. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lion's Pride Tavern podcast. Very exciting news on our raid this weekend. Plus, we are now live streaming our Friday and Saturday night raids on YouTube. I will let you know how to find us in just a moment, but let's start off with some introductions. I'm your host, Fafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up, we have JoBui.
Hi, I'm JoBui. I play a Worgen Fire Mage.
And then we have Lorelei.
Good evening, it's Lorelei, your Night Elf Fury Warrior.
And Epistle.
Epistle, I am a Deny Protection Paladin.
And Tapachino.
Hi, it's Tapachino, your Night Elf Restoration Druid.
Awesome. So it's good to have all you guys back. We don't have a special guest tonight, but that's all right. We seem to be able to take up an hour's worth of time talking anyway.
Sure can.
Yep.
Always something.
So I want to start off with a little bit of podcast info. So we have something new. We have a Facebook page now. Yay!
Yay, Facebook page.
So you can...
So high tech.
So you can go to facebook.com/Lions Pride Tavern, and I'll bring up our Facebook page. Please go there, like us, share us, let everybody know. I did post last week's podcast, so podcast number 26 on there. I posted the YouTube video version of it, so you can not just listen to it, but watch our lovely Donna Bell draw JoBui again.
She does a fantastic job in that one too, by the way.
Yes, she's definitely improving. She's awesome.
Very much so.
So then you can also find us on YouTube. Just do a search for World of Warcraft Lions Pride Tavern. iTunes, if you wanted to listen to just the podcast. And Google Play. And we're also on Podomatic.com. LionsPrideTavern.podomatic.com. If you have any questions, please send them, or comments, send them to LionsPrideTavern@yahoo.com. So 26 weeks ago we started, guys. Well, this is the 27th week. And right now we're getting 355 Podomatic listeners and 1,627 from Google Play, YouTube, and iTunes.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's cool.
What a great audience.
I know.
Yeah,
you
really.
guys are fantastic. They really are. Picking up, and of all the places, we've got like 32 listeners in Sweden. Really?
Nice.
Wow.
I know,
nice.
they're pretty good.
Awesome, guys. I mean, Sweden. Who knew? Who knew those Swedes loved us? So
Word spreading.
Yeah, and let it spread. So how did we do on this week's raid, JoBui? Why don't you give us a recap?
Well, we decided to give Heroic a try, and that's about as far as it went. The mechanics were a little too fast. Everybody wasn't quite ready for that. I think we've got the numbers like DPS, heals, and tank-wise, and all that sort of thing. But the mechanics just got the better of the group, and rather than beat our heads against the heroic wall, we decided to go back into normal and to progress along in there. On the first night, we still made it through, I believe, 5 of the bosses, which is pretty darn good considering we took a couple shots at heroic. And then on the second night, we went on and we downed Star Augur and then High Botanist. And finally, for the first time, somebody must have told him a bad joke because we pushed over Tichondrius. And yeah, for the first time, that was a really clean kill, actually.
Yeah, we flattened them.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It was a 1 pull attempt on Tichondrius, and we
Second.
took him down. Was it second
Sorry,
pull?
yeah. First pull, we had some new people. So first pull, it was kind of okay.
I must have
And
blocked that out.
Yeah, but I know because I died on it.
Oh,
And on the
okay.
second one, when we pulled
We-
the second time, I definitely didn't die.
Yeah, we only had one player go down on the second pull there that
Yeah,
when we
close to the
defeated him.
end.
Yeah, and it was right at the tail end. It was like pretty much as he was dying that one player went down. And then we went on and tried a very, I would say a half-hearted attempt at Elisand. More of a let's take a look and see what it looks like kind of fight.
Yeah.
Because
we
I'm,
didn't,
I'm
we
gonna
didn't have the
admit,
strat worked out or anything like that really for that fight previous to getting there. But we had time to kill the trash, get there, and do one pull before time was up for the raid. But everybody did a great job, and it was a fun raid.
I will admit, as raid leader, I did do my research on it a month ago.
Very good.
Sure.
So yeah, I went into it. When we got Tichondrius down, I was like, oh crap.
Right?
More research.
I think there were a few people going, "Oh, we have time, but what do we know how to do?"
I know the tanks thought that.
There was some furious texting going on between tanks, I can tell you.
I mean,
We have to do a swap. We have to go back and forth. We have to move stuff. Where? I don't know.
Yeah,
And I'm just going, I just have to keep them alive. I just have to keep them alive.
and I had done it and noticed some things about the fight, but I was in no way prepared to like help everybody else understand the fight really. So I tried to do the best I could, but I knew it wasn't quite right.
Yeah, and there were people there. I mean, I wasn't there Saturday, but there were people there that did have some knowledge of doing it.
They did.
They did, and we really appreciate that because they stepped forward. They didn't, and that's what I love about this group. They didn't get upset because the raid leaders didn't know. Because Jobui starts off his speech with, yeah, I've seen this on LFR.
Yeah, that's always
Well-
a good place to start.
Well,
And then we end with,
I
"We
was
are going to
upfront about
really
it, you
check
know.
this out."
Yes, you were very upfront about it.
Yes. Truth is always the best.
So let's go back to the first boss that we did actually pull it on Mythic or Heroic. I'm sorry. I wanted to set it to Mythic,
Yeah, that would have been a real mess.
but my wife had
Surprise.
control. So I was going to see if anybody noticed, but she wouldn't give me control. So, but let's just talk a little bit about that because I know that was we blazed through it when we switched it to normal. So I
Yeah.
want to really talk about the difference between it, so we can let not only our listeners know, but especially our raid members that are listening to the podcast, give them kind of a little more thought for the week on what we might need to work on. I know it's a lot of just mechanics, but Jobui, any insights?
Well, one, it's faster. The things that the boss does, the pace of the fight is quicker, which has like a twofold implication in the fight. One, you've got to be on your toes quicker and like ready to get behind those crystals faster. And two, you have to make sure that you do them, because if you don't, then things really get out of hand very, very quickly, because we'll start to get a lot of ads, and that pacing also means that we have to get those ads down faster as well. It can be a little bit taxing. The other real key that I would note is doing normal, you're used to having a lot of those shards of the armor from the boss around in order to hide behind. And in heroic, there's going to be fewer of those. So you kind of have to plan ahead as to which shard you're going to be hiding behind and be ready to get behind it when it becomes time to do so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what threw me off. Is it was just so fast that first one when you had to get behind the shard, and it threw a lot of people back at that point. But I think just with some practice, we'll definitely get it.
So do we have any thoughts on because I know one of the things I suggested was I'd start calling out Shockwave, when it got to 10 seconds, and that seemed to help people get behind it all the time, but not everybody was getting there, and some people were like, well, I got there, but then I still got kicked back. And the red scorpions, that I think we need to address. But Lorelei, do you have any thoughts?
The thing that I noticed is that the little ads were being tanked somewhere else a lot of the time, and they can still be brought up to the boss where there's more chance of them being cleaved down. So that would be one less set of ads running around. And I know that, and I need to pay more attention when my group does this. There is something about the two big ads that you have to be careful about when one of them dies. But yeah, I think stacking the ads, the little spider ads, would be behind the boss or somewhere near the boss would be better. And it's just going to take people a little while to get used to standing behind the shards. I think when people see them come out, if they kind of move toward them, they don't have to stand right behind them at that moment, but just get near enough to them because that shockwave comes up really fast sometimes.
Well, and just so everybody knows, you can shoot through those.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just, if you see it come up, just go stand behind it. The big thing
Yeah.
is when he turns and does his
That
frontal cone
focus.
attack.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to step away from it.
Yeah, that's really the key. That's why I was saying, when they get used to that, that whole pick your spot and then go over near it, they might have to step away from their spot, but they can go right back to it. And I think once people get used to that, that idea and that mindset, it'll make that fight a lot easier for them.
Now that's funny because that's what I always did on normal was I would get near a shard and be ready to get behind it. And for some reason, I just think the speed just caught me off guard. And I wasn't doing that when we tried it on heroic.
I think sometimes it can also be like when you're going from normal to heroic, you get that like, oh, it's going to be vastly different, and you don't necessarily do the things you normally would do.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that a little bit of the heroic jitters played into that to some extent.
Yeah, no doubt. And not being behind the pillar and not having as many so that people were leaving it to a little too late was probably part of it. Now, I will have to say, Lorelei, we have to look up the information on this one because going into the fight, we were hearing that we had to keep the ads away from the tank because they created some sort of difficulty. So we'll have to make sure we've done our research before going in there next time.
Yeah, and I'll pay a little more attention this week to see where the ads are.
Yeah, I
I
kept
know
them away
I
on
know that we
purpose.
have the small ones are near the boss. We can get them there.
Yeah.
And the main tank, I think, grabs the red one. So
Yep.
All right. So, well, since Epistle's there, any thoughts from the tanking perspective?
well, it got really hairy. We can do it very easily on normal now, but when we get too many ads, even though Epistle's really well geared, at this point, if I get about 2 groups, I have to start popping cooldowns. 3 groups, I may not survive, and I'm sure the healers are seeing me disappear quickly, but that's because I was just getting overwhelmed by all these little Death of 1,000 cut ads.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was a little tough.
I was going to say, Tap, do you got anything you want to add?
Well, for a healing perspective, is again, we just have to get used to the speed and be more prepared on, when things are happening. The ads coming out faster, the pace is faster, so we just have to be on our toes a bit more. The healing should be as far as like, the same as with the mechanics and stuff, but we may have to be ready to pop down, pop our cooldowns quicker. And
So-
watch for this, definitely watch for the health of the tanks. Not that we don't, of course, but they did go down a little faster.
So do you think this was just a matter of, oh my God, we're doing heroic? Or do you think it was just people got lax on the mechanics? Jobui?
A little bit of both. My thoughts on it actually, because I've been thinking about that, since we tried it on Friday night's raid night, and I'm kind of the opinion that it was a cool experiment, but I think maybe we should just get it to a point where we can blaze through all of normal and then go back and do the heroic, just because it'll give us a chance to get a little bit better geared and build a little bit more confidence, and then when we get into that, then we'll be focused on that as opposed to, focused on get through it really fast, like, which is what we're doing right now, is getting through the first few bosses really quickly so we can get to the last bosses and work on our progression. And I just think that that once we start getting more players with like 4 sets and even 2 sets in some cases. I mean, we have a main tank who just got his first tier piece of gear, and now we're like, trying the heroic out, and I think it was interesting, but I think it might be something we might want to like push back a little bit until we manage to down Gul'dan on normal first.
All right, so let's make that the question. Let's because Jobui, I half agree with him, but I want your guys' opinion first. So let's talk about, do you think that we should just keep trying the first boss, or do you think we should just skip it because people aren't ready for it and do the upper bosses? Because I know on Nighthold, when we did it, we got to a certain point, and when we went back and did heroics, we blazed right through the dragons and that, because maybe it's Blizzard, maybe they turned around and made it so you want to go all the way through all the normal bosses before you come to the heroic and start off on the lower ones. So what's your opinion, Lorelei?
I think that we could maybe try the heroic on Saturday when we've gone through all the normal from Friday to Saturday, and then when we end, we should have enough time to go in and try the first 2 bosses on heroic. I mean, I think we can get down the first boss easily. I really think it's a matter of people need to focus more on mechanics and less on, and this may sound weird, but less on DPS. And not just doing DPS, but I mean, less about worrying who's on top, who's, what's going on. Because there's a lot of talking going on during the raids. And I think that a lot of people can't hear when things are happening, when the shockwaves are coming out. 'Cause I'm not sure if everybody's running their DBM, but I think it needs to be tightened up because the heroic versions are unforgiving in this raid, and you really have to be focusing on paying attention.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta agree with her on that, and I think that's a totally fair point, and kind of plays into a little bit of what I was talking about. Like if we focus on the normal and get ourselves, because we just beat Tichondrius, and I think we'll be able to do it again pretty easily. Now that people are getting more comfortable with that fight, and the last 2 are widely considered less difficult than some of the earlier fights, and I think we will get to a point where we have that extra time on Saturdays where we can start trying out the heroics.
Okay. Pistol, what's your thoughts?
I agree with what's been said. There is a downside, though, to leaving the hardest to last. So if we do it on Saturday, people may not be as as fresh as a daisy, ready to go, and so we may not be on our A game for that. The other factor I was thinking about is depends on who we have in our raid composition on Friday and on Saturday, because I know it shifts up a little bit. We have some different people, and I think I'd want to look at our list more carefully and say who's in which group to try the more trickier fights. And all that being said, I don't mind saying we'll try to start the first boss on heroic and just give it a shot for, put a time limit on it. It doesn't take long to get to it. So maybe say, 15 minutes, we try 1 pull or 2, and if it doesn't work, we just shift out, no harm, no foul. I like that we shifted very quickly this last time. We didn't beat our heads against the wall. We quickly changed gears when we realized it wasn't happening. But I think we'll get good at the mechanics. I think it'll sharpen us up if we try it a few more times.
Okay. Before I waive my opinion, Tapachino?
I do think we need to tighten it up, like Lorelei was saying. with the talking and making sure people do have what they need to do the raid, have the DBM installed and such. If we keep getting, and I think this is something that we were talking about earlier, Jabui and I, is, we end up with new people all the time each week, and and we spend a lot of time like on explanations. So if we didn't have to spend so much time doing that, maybe we'd have more time to do, a heroic, get a chance or two at it. But we should still have a time limit on it as well. I would like to try doing the heroic once, and I even wonder, is it something that we just, if we don't get it, we just skip that boss and go to the next? I mean, do we have enough? Does everybody have everything they need from the boss that we don't even have to go back and doing it on normal, but just skip it and go into the next one? So I guess I'm kind of up in the air, see how things go.
See, and I'm of the mindset to give it a shot, because we're so close to the entrance. Give it a shot on the first one, like Epistle said, first two polls. If we don't get it and we're beating our heads on the first two polls, then skip it and go back into normal and blaze through them. Because I think we did get we almost got to Croesus on Friday, and I think
We beat Croesus on Friday.
did we get through Croesus?
Yeah, we got through
Yep.
Croesus. We just
Yeah.
had Star Augur.
But typically what we do on Friday, we get all the way to Star Augur and get it down and stop there. So we didn't get as far because we took the time. But if we would have got it down, it would have definitely been worth it, because those are heroic drops versus normals.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't think we should have new people. I just think that, we need to speed it up a bit in between.
Yeah, well,
if we can.
The new people aren't such a big deal because we haven't really had any new ones per se on a constant basis.
Yeah.
There is a difference between our Friday group and our Saturday group. Friday, and it's funny because last expansion, our Friday group was always the biggest group. And then Saturday, we were just like, man, are we going to have enough people to do Saturday? Now it's the other way around. Friday's like, well, we got, 15, 20 people for Friday, but then Saturday we almost hit 30, so.
Yeah, I was surprised. It did switch around.
And,
so I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure if we shouldn't just keep with heroic, just a poll, maybe just one poll, and then say, okay, no, not even close. Or if we do get close, then make a second attempt. But if we're still having trouble, then just, okay, everybody back out. I think we switch pretty quick because we're right there by the entrance. There's no loot, there's no real big trash to pull. But
no, there's just two groups of trash to pull right before, well, I guess maybe there's three. There's the Scorpion groups too, but it's pretty short, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And I can totally see where you're coming from on that. I think if we do that, we really have to emphasize the point to everybody that it's mechanics, and like really lead everybody into it. We're all right, we're going to try this, but everybody's got to get back to their fundamentals on this boss and focus on that. Like you're coming into it fresh, like we had to do when we first tried this boss. We had to learn the mechanics and get those down before it was a real good success. And I think if we do that, we could make some progress on the heroic. The thought I had on the other side of that is just that, and Tap kind of touched on this a little bit, is right now with normals, with our main group. Now, granted, we added a new player. When we do have to do explanations for a new player, or we have to, talk about the part of the raid that we're going to be taking on for progression, that can take up a lot of time. With a new player on 6 bosses, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes to explain the fight. You're talking about 30 minutes out of a 2-hour raid over the course of the raid night in just explanation. And so that can be a real slowdown on the progress. And I know some raid groups that get through all the bosses in a single 2.5 hour raid. And so I'd kind of like to see us get to a point where that's like the norm, where we jump in and we're blazing through it because everybody knows every fight. So we're like pulling the trash. We get to the boss. We start fighting the boss. We immediately start killing the trash and move on to the next one. And I worry a little bit that if we push the heroic like now before we get to that point in the normal, that it'll slow us down in the long run. But I mean, if we put a time limit on it or something like that, it probably would help a little.
I've got two thoughts on that. One, we also have a cap as to how far we can really push heroics because Spellblade, from all accounts, is vicious, and we're
It's
not likely to get through that
horrible.
in
Yeah.
any time. Yeah, so that's
It's
not
No,
going to
tough
happen.
fight on
that
heroic.
is my guild. We're working on that right now. That is just an awful, awful fight.
Yeah, so I'm figuring we can't really push the heroic too far. The other thought was, I think we can find a lot more speed. I mean, as a tank, I'm always eager to pull, and I think there's a feeling, because there used to be, that you have to have all hands on deck, or you couldn't possibly pull trash. And I'm thinking we could probably get trash going a whole lot faster, even when everyone isn't all assembled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, definitely like more discipline and that, hey, we have a lot of fun and we don't want that to change. We want it to be a good time. But we do have to approach heroics differently. We have to be more
Right. I
serious
agree.
about it. We can't have people commenting, about, oh, do a heroism or do res this one or that one. We've got to have just, the one or two main people speaking and, during those times. Healers have to be able to communicate, the tanks, and as well as the, whoever's calling stuff. So, I mean, not so much in normal, but yeah, we do need to tighten it up if we're going to do heroics like that.
Yeah, we definitely have to get a little control over the crosstalk during fights. As far as like if there's people we've got people designated to call a particular fight or they're calling out something, and ideally, and this is kind of what I was getting at before, we get to a point where we don't have to call the fights, where everybody's so comfortable with it that we can chit chat while we're doing it because everybody's so comfortable with it.
Right,
And
and that's where we are with some of the normals.
yeah,
Yes.
and I
Yeah,
think that's
because
what played into the heroics too.
you can pretty much, if you're running things, quick and just getting through, you can get through all but the last two bosses in one night.
Yeah.
And then we could do the last two bosses on Saturday when we have more people, and then maybe start heroics, or if start them whenever, but when we have the best group of people or the most. But just working on mechanics and talk when we can talk, because we always have fun doing that and joking with each other. But when it comes time for the fight, we want to get that fight down as fast as possible.
Sure. So, what do you think? Friday or Saturday is a better try for that, Jobui?
I would vote for Saturdays. I think getting a clean run through normal is a better priority for the raid group as a whole than getting the first two or three bosses down on heroic right now for the raid group.
Sure.
I mean, it does give you because you've gone it. Most of us have done it Friday night, so we're kind of in that mindset already. Instead of waiting a week, where we haven't maybe raided together or done anything together, so it kind of gets us in that mindset again.
Okay. Pistol, what's your?
Yeah, I think probably between the two nights, it feels like the Saturday group at the moment is just a little tighter and would probably be more effective in getting a heroic down.
Sure. Lorelai?
I agree. I think Saturday would probably be a good day to try starting it.
Sure. Well, it's easy enough because I mean I've got a lockout already, so it's not a big deal.
And the other thing I'd like to maybe suggest that might speed us up a little is if we say our quarter two time, which is usually our start time, if we say that is the boss pull time, so we can clear up to there at that point.
Well, now, so how does that work though? If we're trying to summon people in, and we've got trash going, can we still summon as the trash is being fought?
No, they just will have to walk in, or they'll have to wait until we've stopped killing the trash.
Right.
I mean, it's not so bad. Usually, I would say, usually by the half hour, we've got enough that can clear the trash. And
And we
then
can
we're
one
just
tank it.
yeah, and then we're pulling in stragglers
Okay.
that are coming in late at that point. So I totally agree with that.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we set it up so that on the half hour, we go ahead and who's there on the half hour goes in, starts clearing trash up to the first boss, and we just stay outside rather than bringing them in and summon, because they can summon outside. I guarantee that, even if we're pulling
Yep.
trash on the inside.
Yep, and they can summon on the outside, and Nighthold is the easiest raid to get to that they've ever put in the game.
Yeah.
It's true.
You've got a teleport that can go right from the base in Suramar, like just around the corner from the entrance. It's super fast and easy for players to get there. Summoning is a lot less important at the beginning of the raid. Even later on in the raid, I mean, because it puts checkpoints in. So if you walk into the raid, you end up further along. I totally think we could just get to the first boss, and it's at the 45-minute mark, we get started on the boss.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Then we'll implement that. I just my whole thought was that I kind of figured what we did is we blindsided everybody by saying, everybody walked in thinking we're gonna start with normals, and we said, yeah, we're gonna try this, and I think everybody panicked. So my thought was, announce it this week. That's what we're gonna do. That gives them 7 days to think about it. Versus blindsiding them when they walked in the door, because I know Bronzebeard was like, we're on heroic.
Which
Sure.
is surprising because he's usually the one that's, what's like, oh, we should do the higher ones.
He wasn't
Yeah.
unhappy, just surprised.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
surprised,
Right.
yeah.
But that could have, just that reaction could have thrown our new player off, because I know he didn't expect to go into normals. I guarantee it.
Well, it was a
we just
little
brought
bit
in.
it was a little bit of a last minute decision that we decided we would give that a shot.
Yeah.
But I think if we push on the normals like we had been doing, and we give everybody the expectation that on Saturdays, if we down Gul'dan, then we're gonna start working on the heroics on Saturday. But otherwise, next week we're gonna do this, and I think that will put it in people's heads. I totally agree that they'll be a little more mentally prepared for that challenge.
All right. Awesome, guys.
Well, plus it'll give people a chance to look up the bosses, and we can make sure you're prepared, make sure you're gemmed, enchanted, make sure you study up on it, let them know that as well.
Yeah, that's good to mention, because one of the things I know, I have the raids posted in open raid, for new recruits. But one of the things I do state in there that there are a few things that are required for us to have for you to raid with us. And I know we brought in a lot of people from people we know, so maybe it's a good thing that we mention this. So a few of the things that we expect from our raid people is to have TeamSpeak. Obviously, you don't have to talk, but you do have to listen. So it's okay if you don't have a mic, but you need to be able to at least acknowledge the fact that you can hear us. The second is definitely having Deadly Boss mods as an add-on. You've got to have it, and you've got to have GTFO.
Yeah, and the minimum, those two.
Yeah, and that's what I say. It's just on the minimum. Those are the only two, and they got to be up to date before the run. And then gems and enchants. That's another thing. You should, if you are coming into the raid and you're like, oh man, I forgot to get my enchants. I got that new gear last weekend. Well, you need to step it up so we don't have to, because those little things add up. I mean, I hate to say it, but 27K is what we had last week on Tichondrius, and we didn't get it down. And that could have been just a matter of somebody having the gems in their new equipment, or an enchant on their new equipment.
And it doesn't have to be the expensive ones. I mean, even just the lower levels will help. Every little bit, like you said, helps.
And I'm not trying to be picky. I'm just saying, this is something that I post that, we expect out of our raid members, that they have these things and they're ready to go. So I just want to reiterate it, that, for some of those that have joined through friends, maybe this didn't get told to them, and they're listening to this and go, oh, okay, I'll make sure I have DBM, because I know that was brought up 2 or 3 times that, I don't know if these people are hearing DBM or, stuff like that. So we need to make sure that's up. And by all means, for our listeners, when we do our raids, we're more than happy before raid time. If you need help setting up DBM or setting up GTFO or anything, you just let one of us know. We'd be happy to. I know JoBui does all the time. I've helped people many a times. So
Yeah, show up early.
Yep.
If you need a little help, show up early. And we're often on a good half an hour or longer before the raid starts. So show up early, get in TeamSpeak, and contact one of us. And if you need some help with something, we'll be happy to do so.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, guys, that's awesome. I think we need to move on to some fan asked questions. I got one from a guy that, well, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, but he wanted to know about add-ons, and since we were talking about GTFO and DBM, he was wondering if there's one website where we all get our add-ons from, and what are they? That's funny. And what are the beneficial ones that you must have? So let's just talk briefly about that. Just pick a couple that you know of. JoBui, that might help you out.
Yeah. First of all, I would say the place, in my opinion, to get add-ons would be Curse. Download the Curse client. It allows you to search for add-ons. It allows you to look up information on add-ons. They also have a website where you can look up information. It's a great tool for anyone playing WoW and other games, actually. As far as any beneficials that, besides like your base, like DBM, GTFO, and that sort of thing, I would actually list Pawn in one of those essentials, to be honest. Just because it really helps players figure out their tunes and sets them in a direction that for success. Because it'll help them get their tuned up to a point where they're gonna get the most out of their tune, or get more out of their tune.
It also gives you the advantage of being able to do the loot changes, the loot trading really quickly, because you can see right away whether it's an upgrade for you or not.
Yeah, you'll know, is this thing going to be an upgrade for me or not? Prior to using Pawn, our raid group, a piece of gear would go up and people would be like, oh, I don't know, that might be an upgrade for me. But now that most of our raid group uses Pawn, a piece of gear comes up, and mostly what we hear of is, oh, that's a 2% upgrade for me. That's a 4% upgrade for me. And everybody else knows what's going on. So I would recommend that you get Pawn. That's almost an essential piece of add-on material for players these days. Other than that,
well, I'd add one, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you're doing DPS, you want to have a meter. So you want to know how much damage you're doing and be able to measure your increase. And if you change your rotation, or change your gear, or change any number of things, you want to measure your improvement, and in a real raid situation. So I use SCADA, SKADA, only because it has a smaller footprint, uses less system resources than some others.
I really like Details. I used to use Recount all the time, but I have since switched to Details, and I really like it. I think it's a great DPS meter, or healing meter, or damage taken meter, depending on what you need.
What's the plus for that one?
Details gives you a lot of control over the kind of information that you're getting. It also allows you to analyze your data a little bit heavier than I was getting out of Recount.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I enjoy Recount because I just want a quick little snapshot of what people are doing. So, Lorelei?
Yeah, I think everybody's mentioned the ones that are essential. I also like to just run Omen 3, which is a threat meter, just in case I'm I'm pulling thread or somebody else is pulling thread, it gives you a little red box that lets you know that you're pulling thread, and that way you can run to the tank or just stop DPSing for a second just to get it off of you.
Yep, that's a good one. Tap from a healer.
Basically what's already been mentioned. Some of the other add-ons are, basically like using your bars and stuff. Like I use Helium, but there's LVU, I believe it's called, and other, healing bars but that's like a very personal preference. There's a lot of good ones out there, but definitely the DBM, GTFO. I use SCADA myself. Um, yeah, those are basically the ones you have to have. And
Yeah.
Curse, you got to have Curse and Pawn. Once I got Pawn, I'm like, oh my god, this thing is so great. It took me a few minutes to get used to, and JoeBui was very helpful. Um, but that's just been fantastic. I use it on all my tunes now. Um, I use Noxic as far as the Noxic website, as far as figuring out what I want as far as my stats go, and you can just take their pawn strings, copy them, and import them right into pawn, which is another very handy feature that has too. You can import, other people's strings to see, what you need for your, what you want for your stats, or you can, do it yourself and, um, set them up the way you want. So very good. I was very happy to get that one.
There's two others that I would recommend for players as something, and the one is not terribly essential, but tidy plates.
Oh yes.
I really love tidy plates. Blizzard has implemented some nameplate stuff in the game, but I still like the way tidy plates does it better. And what that does is it will put a plate like a information bar above the target's head that will tell you things like what debuffs are on them, whether they are casting a spell, um, how much health they have left, whether or not you have aggro or not. Things like that is super helpful for rating in general. I think that one is darn near essential. Um, and the other one that, of course, deserves mention is Weak Auras 2, because Weak Auras 2 allows you to create all kinds of notifications for yourselves and that you can share with others uh, for your gameplay. And it's a little complicated to get used to, but there's a lot of already created Weak Auras available and a lot of built-in automatically generated things. In fact, even Wowhead has Weak Auras exports right on their website for practically every spell and effect in the game. It's a really powerful tool to have in your toolbox.
I think we've touched on this one before, but I'm gonna go ahead and pose it, and I think JoeBui would probably answer the whole thing. But he wants to know, or she wants to know, if there's a way to get legendary drops to drop faster. And we kind of briefly touched on this, post podcast. But I'm gonna let JoeBui explain how the legendary drops work, and the multiple drops afterwards. So, JoeBui.
Yeah, we have talked about this before a little bit. Um, Legendaries, Blizzard wants everybody to have two legendaries, and in that desire to have everybody get two legendaries, they've implemented a bad luck mechanic. So as your character progresses in the game and you start doing the content and you get to level 110 and that sort of thing, and it can even happen before 110, there is a mechanic that says, did you get a legendary on this thing that you just did? And if the answer is no, then your luck increases slightly for getting a legendary off the next thing you do. And eventually you will get a legendary. That bad luck mechanic works through your first two legendaries that you get. After that, your third, fourth, fifth, and so on, all the way up to 10th. I think there are 10 legendaries available for every tune right now. Then the chance is always the same, except for one little caveat. The harder the content that you're doing, the greater the chances are that you're going to get a legendary. So if you're doing Mythic Plus dungeons, your chances of getting a legendary are higher in there than if you're doing a heroic dungeon. And if you are doing a Mythic raid, your chances are higher than if you were doing a normal raid. But how much of a chance higher? No one can really say. It's just basically down to luck after the first two. The first two are eventually guaranteed, but after that, it's just luck, whether you'll get a new one or not.
All right, very good. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I actually have a question about that. Do you know if you like? I have a balance spec and a resto spec, so I got that shield for the neck piece, and then I got a piece for my DPS spec, and then the third piece was for heals. So is there a chance that my second piece for DPS is going to fall higher, or is like that count for that? You know, that 2-piece count for the whole character itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, is it for the whole?
Yeah, I totally understand your question, and the honest answer is that I don't know if it's tune specific or if it's spec specific, because I I would surmise that it is probably tune specific, because I know that each individual tune, if you have an alt, your alt is going to have the bad luck mechanic until it gets 2 legendaries. But I don't believe that if your alt or if your main has 2 legendaries for your main spec, say it's DPS or healing or what have you, that you will get the bad luck mechanic kicked in if you switch to a different spec. Like if you get 2 healing legendaries, I don't believe the bad luck mechanic is going to help you get your DPS ones any better, but I can't say for certain. It's I have never seen any information about that particular scenario.
Because if I look at my 3 legendaries, only one of them is actually for healing spec.
Right.
The neck with the shield, that's, everybody's getting that one. So do I hold my breath and hope I get another healing legendary,
Well,
or do I feel like I just kind of ran out of luck?
well, no, it's not that you run out of luck. It's just you don't get a luck bonus for all the other ones. I mean, I play fairly often, and I've done a lot of content with my tune, and my main tune, Jobui, has 6 legendaries now. But I do the emissary quests every day. I run dungeons fairly often. I raid, obviously, with you guys. And I've gotten 6 of them so far. I only have 4 left to get. So it's just a matter of, I think, a war of attrition when it comes to getting like all the legendaries available. I do know that in 7.2, they are going to implement a new thing, which is you get a token for a legendary. And it's basically an unknown legendary item. It's like a cash box that you might get from a champion mission or something like that, or from completing a quest. And basically what that does is if you are playing as your DPS spec and you happen to get this token, which would be a legendary item, you don't have to apply it to your DPS spec if your main spec is usually your healer spec. You can just switch to your healer spec, then open the box, and you will get a legendary that is appropriate for your healing spec, as opposed to one that's appropriate for your DPS spec.
That would be nice.
Currently, the only way to control that is to set your loot spec to whatever you want your legendary to come from. But that isn't going to help your, like if you're trying to improve your DPS spec, and you have your loot spec set to your healer spec, it's not really going to help your DPS at all. So that will allow us in the future to, can upgrade or continue to improve an off spec while still not jeopardizing the possibility of getting a legendary for our main spec.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll appreciate that, or she. All right, it's time. Let's cue the music. It's time for Lorelei's Pet Battle Minute.
Hello again, and here are some tips about starting pet battles if you have not even tried it yet. What you need to do is get yourself to the auction house or find a friend who's an engineer and get a mechanical pet first. Get a beast, which you can get anywhere outside. And those are going to be two really good pets to level anything that you can do with the battle pet tamers that are in the zones in the starting areas. And once you get those pets to level 10 or higher, then you need to start looking at adding more pet families to your teams. You're going to need to look at a site, warcraftpets.com is excellent. They have different guides, they have maps for zones about where you can find pets. And when you get 150 different pets, you will get the Littlest Pet Shop achievement and you'll get a free celestial dragon. That's an excellent pet to use for pet battles. So get those first couple of pets going, get them to level 10 or higher, and then start adding some different things in. And that's your pet minute for today.
All right. Fantastic. Joe Bowie with his Transmog Minute.
Transmog Minute. Yeah. So coming up in 7.2, Blizzard's going to be adding a new feature to Transmog. It's the Sets tab. Now, the Sets tab will allow you to look at various WoW sets of gear, especially tier gear, and take a look at how those items will look on your toon as a complete set. You can also mouse over on the individual items when you select a set, and it'll tell you where those pieces come from if you don't have them, or if there is another piece of gear that uses the same model. Sometimes they're a different color. And if you have a complete set, and I'm not entirely certain if it's required to have a complete set, but there will be the option in there where if you select a set, and let's say you have the complete set, it'll be a one-button click to transmog your entire outfit to look just like what you're looking at in the Sets tab, as opposed to having to go through and do each one individually. They're also introducing a new achievement for transmogrification called That's So Last Millennium. And that is an achievement you get for collecting all of the tier pieces for your particular class from the Nighthold. And if you have any other questions about transmogrification, or if you would like some advice about a piece to match your current set, contact me at askJobui@gmail.com. And that's been your Transmog Minute.
All right. Next up, Epistles. Come at me. A tanking minute.
Welcome to Come At Me. Today we'll be talking about tank swapping. What you might wonder is a tank swap. You may have seen from time to time that a boss will be attacking a tank and then will be attacking another tank, and there's a little back and forth going on, and you might have wondered, why does that happen? Well, Blizzard, in its infinite wisdom, decided that it would be fun to keep the tanks really interested. Unlike a 5-man dungeon where the tank has to always have all the threat, in an instance, if you have more than one tank, 2, say out of a group of 25, 30 people, to keep it interesting for them, they create a couple different dynamics to keep it fun and interesting and challenging for tanks. Long and short of it is, sometimes you have a different mechanic like, say, a stacking debuff. That's where increasing amounts of damage will be done by a boss unless the tank gets a break. That would actually eventually just kill the tank. So they've created this interesting dynamic where you have a stacking debuff. If one tank has it for, say, 2 or 3 stacks, they could be fine. They swap out to another tank. They can take 2 or 3 while the original debuff drops. If you're thinking about it from a healing perspective, it might do, say, 10% damage to the tank's health. But then at the second debuff, it's 20. Third one, it's 30. You can see if that stacks up, eventually it's just an insta-death for a tank. So swapping up keeps it interesting from the tanks, but also helps you survive a battle. So that's why you do a tank swap. But sometimes things get kind of interesting with a tank swap, and they always have a little curveball to keep it different. Star Augur, for example, which we've been fighting, has a very interesting dynamic. If you fought it and know the thing that must not be named, it gets put on with a countdown timer onto a tank who is tanking the boss. And they have to get out of there. Because if they don't, that the ad will drop right there on the boss and will make the boss invulnerable. So that's a case where you also have to have a tank swap. So last time around, for example, I'm tanking Augur. Darg is there with me. I get the debuff. I have to run across the room to let this thing drop. And then I have to keep it over there, because if it gets close to the boss, we're going to wipe. There's no way you could do damage to the boss. But here's where the curveball happens. At the end of that fight, we actually have to do a really high-end quick tank swap. So we don't kill the second mob that drops, and so it's just sitting there, not really doing too much damage. But in the scenario I was giving you, Darg would be on the Star Augur. He's got it booted over to the corner where the other ad is, but drops there, while I switch over back to the middle of the room to pick up the boss. So that's a kind of a more complex kind of tank swap, where the two tanks have to both move in space and move in and change their target and taunt off the other one at the same time. So it can get really tricky and challenging. But for most people who aren't doing the tanking, they just realize they keep hitting one target and it's not necessarily complex. But to achieve some of those swaps sometimes can be really tricky and challenging, and sometimes a little RNG, random number generator, bad luck kicks in, and the swamp doesn't go quite as well as planned. But it's one more thing that keeps the tanking interesting, and definitely something that's worth practicing. And that has been a tanking minute or 2 or 3.
All right, next up is Tapachino's Tap into the Healing Minute.
Oh, hello. For our healing minute today, I'd like to talk about healing aggro. Now, Epistle had mentioned in a previous episode that, the tanks grab aggro to try to keep the mobs and the bosses from attacking the DPS and the healers so that they can do their jobs. One of the things with healing, though, is that the mobs and ads don't really like you keeping everybody alive. So you might end up generating aggro, generating threat, and that you'll have things come to you. And as the DPS or anybody else, you get aggro on you and you run to the tanks. You run to the tanks, let them grab the ad or the boss or whomever there is on you, and then you would get out, back out to your position. One of the things that can help you kind of not grab so much aggro is, using like your low level spells. They don't generate so much healing, so they're not as noticeable. Trying to stay out of the melee range, or, unless, of course, your raid leader assigns you there. If you're not assigned to go into the melee group, kind of stay out of the range of the ads and the bosses, and that'll help you have, less threat to them. And use your big heals when you absolutely need them, and which will also help you conserve mana, because that's very important to have. You want to be able to keep your mana up through the fight. And that is about it for our healing aggro. Again, you get it, run to the tank or tanks, and then go back to whatever position that you were maintaining. And that is my healing minute for today.
Thank you very much, Tap. It's WFN News, Warcraft Fafford News. So, as I said last week, this is a pretty slow week for news because everybody's anticipating 7.2 to come out. So there's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen. A lot of it's already in stone, though. So I'm not going to go into great detail on 7.2, but you can definitely go look that stuff up anywhere that you want. Icy Veins is a good place for news, and so is Wowhead. They keep up with pretty much the latest news. I do want to say that the Dark Moon Fair started this weekend and will run till next weekend. So you can definitely get in there and have fun with the fair. There's some mounts there you can get.
It's a great way to level up your professions, at least by 5 skill points.
Yep.
The Blazing Wings toy.
Yes.
All right, so that's pretty much it for the Warcraft news for this week. stay tuned. Hopefully 7.2 we'll have a lot more to talk about because I'm sure at some point Blizzard will mess something up and everybody will complain about it. So thanks for listening, and we're going to move right along to one question that I still haven't answered myself because I haven't done it, is do you have your Flame Saber mount from Heroes of the Storm? Joe Bowie's already got his, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had to get mine right away because, it perfectly matches my outfit.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. So, yeah,
It's
I
all
got
about the
mine like
look.
right away. You know, do keep in mind, folks, there is about a week left to get that. So if you're gonna get it, the time is now because once it's gone, and you'll never be able to get it again.
That's very true. So let me ask you, if you've already gotten your mount, then you can just say yes, you got your mount, and then answer this question: are you still playing Heroes of the Storm?
No, I am not. Uh, I've got a number of games that I play, and Heroes of the Storm is a fun game, but it wasn't exactly my cup of tea. It was more of like a Darjeeling, and I'm kind of an Earl Grey guy.
Good analogy. I like that. Lorelai, how about you?
No, I haven't gotten mine yet, and I need to get on it this week because unfortunately I have been binge watching a Chinese fantasy show on Netflix, and I've had to watch 62 episodes. So my life has been on hold for a little bit.
I'm going to have to get with you after the podcast and find out what that is.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
me too, actually.
amazing.
Epistle, how about you?
I cheated. I had I farmed it out to my boys, so they came on and played on my machine. I played a couple games and got the feel of it, to know that, again, it's not my thing. But I'm enjoying the mount.
But you haven't continued playing.
No.
Okay. And Tapachino?
Yes, I did have my mount, and yes, I am sort of still playing. Anybody that needs help, I, don't mind going in and being their partner, or, a few of us go in and help get their mount. I actually truly do enjoy the game, and I can't anticipate playing again, even without a reward like this awesome freaking mount.
Very good. I may take you up on that.
Anytime, brother.
So I want to send us off with reminiscing the past, a noob story, a thought, or just a memory you have. And the area I picked this week, you guys don't know, Red Ridge Mountain.
Oh,
Joe Bouie?
yeah, Red Ridge Mountain. You know, I liked that zone when I was coming up in the world of Azeroth. The thing that always struck me about that particular zone was it was the first time that I felt like I had enlisted the help of some big giant creature, because I recall the quest in that zone where you have to get this big ogre to pick up a rock up off of some trapped soldier and throw it into the lake. And I just thought that was really cool that I've taken control of this big giant ogre, and of course I wanted to like use it to attack things. I'm like, oh, kill that thing, and it was just not. It would just follow me around, of course. But I still recall that moment when I was like, oh wow, I've got this big ogre under my control, and I thought that was really really cool.
Okay, Lorelai?
I think the thing I remember most, and I'm pretty sure this was part of Red Ridge. If I'm not, I'm talking about the wrong place. There was a tower that you had to go to, and back in the early days, getting into the tower was hard enough. But then you had to go upstairs, and there was a Stitches type creature up there and a mage that you had to kill. And you actually had to find a group to do this because that Stitches type thing would just tear you up. And here you are at what, level 15, 20? And he's almost like a boss. And I just hated doing that tower.
I think you're thinking of Westfall.
No,
No, I think
this
it's the Tower
is-
of Ilgalar, I think.
Yeah, Tower of something. And now you can just run in there and do what you need to do, and it's nothing. But back in those days, you had to find somebody to come and help you because everything spawned so fast. And then the Stitches guy would just chase you down the stairs and, oh, look, everything you killed respawned, and you just died all the time. He was up right. What they have there now is the tower is still there, and you go up a mountain, and there's a new set of alliance where you have to get into a tank and then come back down the mountain and kill all the little critters that are there.
Yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar. I mean,
They've changed that whole area out now with quests. There's new
It
quests
has.
in there.
Yeah, it definitely has. Because I recall, I'm thinking that tower, is that the one where you had to take the heads in like vanilla? You had to go up there and take the heads of the two guys, but you had to do it as a group. So you had to find somebody. Is that the one you're talking about, or is that further
It
over?
might have been. I didn't do vanilla. I was looking up the name to see if I could find it, but it is. It's the Tower of Ilgalar.
Okay.
So it is
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yep.
they've just changed it. You still have to run up there and kill something, but yeah, that was a horrible place to have to go quest in, that little tower.
Epistle, reminiscent?
Oh, deaths. So many deaths. I remember that was where I discovered swimming, because in Lake Everstill there were some quests below a dock, and I drowned beneath the dock, and I was down below the water too long, and I got disoriented at one point, didn't know what up was. So many deaths just trying to figure out how to work your way through water, until I figured, oh, two mouse buttons, it's so easy. But at the time, it was a totally disorienting and confusing and ultimately fun once I got better at it. Series of quests.
Nice. Tapachino?
Red Ridge, oh boy, I've done that place so many times. I just remember it being very red, having a lot of ridges. I loved that quest that AskJobui was talking about. The getting on that ogre guy. It was fun. I liked it, but I just like did it so many times that and I just wouldn't, except for when I first started playing. Once I cleared it that first time, I really didn't clear it back again. I just did it to level up and get out of there and move on to the next one. But it was fun. One of the things that was frustrating though is, remember when you first get there, you had to kill these little birds and spiders and whatever they were, and there were never enough of them because there's like 20 other people doing the same thing. But you get through it, and but I guess I could say I like it, but I'm fine if I never go back there again either.
I actually really enjoyed the area because I played it from vanilla, and like I was saying with Lorelei, you go up in that tower, and you had to find 3 people. You could not take those guys on and get their heads without help. So I really enjoyed that. And then they took it away, and I was like, okay. Then I came back to it, and they had the whole story of Rambo. Now, it wasn't Rambo, it was John. Oh, what's his name?
Keishan, something like that.
Oh,
Just had.
Yeah, something like that. Keishan? Yeah, I think it was Keishan.
Yeah, anyway, so that was Rambo's, in the movie Rambo, that was his colonel, Colonel Troutman. So I think it was John Troutman, okay? That's the guy I'm talking about. So John Troutman is there, and that was actually the colonel for that particular Sylvester Stallone movie. But they did the whole, you went out and you got on the boat, and then I think it was a fire mage. Yeah, it was a fire mage got on the back end of the boat and blasted a fireball, and you went skipping across the lake to the other side, and I actually recorded that and put it to music. I thought that was so cool, that they did that. But also back in vanilla, where Epistle was talking about diving for the necklace, for the little girl's necklace,
Oh, that's
and
what it
looking
was.
in the mud puddles,
Oh, yeah.
the little mud thing, because it was in a random one, and you had to swim around all of them. But I remember going out into the main part of the lake, and there's the Loch Ness monster looking thing.
Yep. Right, and when you're trying to find the necklace.
Yep. And there's one chest down in an old sunken boat that's down in the bottom. There was a chest down there that you had to go down and click on it. Every time I did that, dang Loch Ness monster thing came and started eating me. So I really enjoyed Red Ridge Mountain. I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was very well laid out. You know, you got this little town, you know, just a few buildings, and then up behind you was all the mountains and all over the place around the lake. There was just so much to do there, you know. And then you moved on to the next area, you know. I really liked it. It was one of my favorite spots. So
I also liked how they had Fight Club down in the bottom of one of those buildings in there. There's a
yep,
little Fight
That's
Club
where you
going
found
on.
John Keeshan the first
Yep.
time.
Yeah, is down
Yep.
in the Fight Club.
Yeah, because that was significant of the movie when, you know, he's over in Vietnam or whatever, and he's doing his Fight Club thing there. You know, I mean, it was just such a play on the movie. I loved it. It was great.
So is the first rule of Lakeshire is that we don't talk about Lakeshire?
Red Ridge. We don't talk about Red Ridge Mountain.
See, I didn't play in vanilla, so a lot of those things, you know, I didn't see or don't remember. I think I started like right before Lich King. But
Oh yeah,
now it's like, oh, it sounds like fun. I want to go and do that stuff.
You
It was.
should.
Some of those you just missed some of those old quests that were fun.
That's why I brought up the whole Reminiscence Pass. You know, go start a new tune, get it up to level 20, 25, and go visit Red Ridge Mountain again. See what's changed. I think it's cool. So anyway, guys, that's been our time. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you for listening.
See you.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
See ya.
If you like this podcast, throw us a like and subscribe to our channel. And please, leave comments or questions below. Maybe we'll answer them on the air next podcast. We are hosted on Podomatic.com. Our website is lionspridetavern.podomatic.com. Our podcast also airs on iTunes for Apple users, Google Play for Androids, and YouTube. Just search World of Warcraft Lions Pride Tavern podcast. See you next week, and thanks for listening.